Hey guys, my name is Rye, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about my journey in pugging Mythic Plus through Dragonflight, my successes, my defeats, and most importantly, what I think were the most important takeaways I had in pugging title on all three roles, tank, healer, and DPS. Before Dragonflight launched, I was actually a big Classic Andy. I was the GM and raid lead of a pretty big guild on US Benediction, where I raided all the way from Classic Vanilla to Wrath of the Lich King. When Dragonflight came out, a bunch of my friends from my Classic guild decided it was worth to give it another try. I was a little hesitant, as I know getting back into retail after a long time is kind of cumbersome. If you don't have a network, you're not in a raiding guild, and you really don't have a lot of connections, it's really hard to get back into WoW from a competitive sphere, and more importantly, if you're not raiding, it's very hard to get into M+. When people think about M+, and I read the Reddit forums, or just in general, some of the forum posts, a lot of people are really discouraged about even trying to pug M+, because they think it's impossible without a raid guild, without raiding gear, or more importantly, a set group. In my experience, although those things help quite a bit, I would say at the end of the day, none of that is actually really relevant if you want to be able to push high keys in Mythic Plus. And most importantly, if your goal's only title, there are a lot of different ways that you can achieve this. So I guess now you're probably wondering, how did I, a guy who spent most of his free time on Classic, come back to retail after a long time and manage to get Mythic Plus title across every season of Dragonflight? So today, I wanted to go over the top 5 biggest things that I learned pugging Mythic Plus to title range in all 3 roles, tank, healer, and DPS. Some of the feedback points that I've received, and most importantly, what you can do to really expand your network and drive home some selling points in becoming a good M+ player. As you're watching this video, remember that these are my takeaways. These are a lot of things that I found to be really useful for me, some of my success stories, and some of my defeats, but ultimately, things work differently for everybody. I'm not a pro, I'm not in a raid guild, I'm just an average guy trying to do Mythic Plus, and I really enjoy it. But hopefully some of these things can help you become a better Mythic Plus player, and put things into perspective when you're pugging your keys, or you're starting to build a group. Just as they tell you in your Business 101 class, building connections, getting involved, and being able to be approachable are the most key features of being successful. And I'm here to tell you today that that's absolutely no different than playing World of Warcraft. And part of this success is actually just being integrated and involved in different communities. Whether or not you want to start up your own community, which we'll talk about here, or just join another one, these are both very, very impactful ways in which you can be successful as a Mythic Plus player, a raider, and even just... So this comes into my first tip, is that you should try to build a community. And now I'm not talking like you need to go form a Twitter, like you need to create a Reddit account. I'm talking just go start up an old-fashioned Discord. I'm sure you could think back to a good time where you joined a new Discord with a bunch of people doing keys, or maybe even a raid guild. People are often active in channels, people were streaming each other's content, streaming keys, streaming raids, and people genuinely wanted to be there. Want to start to do Mythic Plus, you need to actively engage with the people that want to play with you. I think some of the most fun I've actually had playing this game was when I actually wasn't indeed playing, but rather hanging out in Discord with some friends, people I just met, or watching them do a key. Sometimes you can learn a lot from watching other people, but at the same time, sometimes it's just nice to have companionship and company. The thing about WoW players is they want to talk about WoW. When they're in their free time, they want to watch keys, and if they're not streaming on Twitch, or if they don't want to be watching Twitch, they want to be actively engaging in a Discord conversation or call. This is why, without a doubt, this is my #1 tip for somebody trying to get back into the game and develop strong bonds in Mythic Plus. Go build a community, go sit in Discord, stream your keys to Discord, and actively have and allow other people to come in and hang out whenever you want. Obviously, this is going to start pretty slow, as you might only have 1 or 2 friends that really want to come in or that you might want to do keys with. But I think as you start to build up your network, there are a bunch of people that, especially in the high key sphere, just like to go and watch keys. Most jokingly, we'll always say we're hate watching. There's a lot of love watching, but there also is hate watching too. People like to see the pressure of groups either timing or depleting keys, and you're going to have to get used to the fact that there are both sides of the fence. So here are my 3 steps to build a community. 1. Go make a Discord server. 2. Anytime you do a key, even if you're looking to do a pug, invite people to join that channel. Especially if you're in a little bit of a lower bracket and trying to move your way up, you're not going to always have everybody join the call. But it is important to give that out there, because you might get people in the call, and if you have a successful key, you might have people want to hang around to do more. Especially too if you have a text channel, somewhere where you can post updates, maybe a key, maybe a route, or even like some general blue post updates. People love chiming in on that and giving their opinion. So don't take this for granted, as it's a really easy way to get people connected, network a little bit, and get more people involved in your sphere of doing keys. And big ol' number 3, stream your key. I'm not talking about going on Twitch. I'm not talking about going and making a YouTube video. I'm talking that you should go in and join a server and help stream your key. If you decide that you don't want to make your own server, but you want to go hang out or be part of another server that's pretty big, go in there and as often as you can, start streaming your progress. People often want to be engaged and involved in Discord conversations, and when they see that you're up to something, they're going to want to come in, maybe chat, maybe watch, maybe even while they're sitting there muted at work. But this allows you to kind of branch out a little bit and start opening up conversations with people you might not know as well, and as well have them spend time with you. And that's pretty important for going down the line. Across my hundreds of keys timed and across my hundreds of keys depleted, I've noticed one common thing, is that when things go wrong, you don't have an active voice in the group helping coordinate the group through a really tricky time. Now, I think one of the things that I've learned as a raid leader in the past is that even under pressure, you have to be able to react and use the tools available to you to make educated decisions that are going to help save your party. One of the biggest things I find in pug keys, especially below the title level, is that not a lot of people understand what's going on with the rest of their group. They don't track stops, they don't track kicks, and they really don't track defensives, but especially as you get into the higher bracket, one of the most important things is being able to track what your group has access to. Now, this isn't a healer, a DPS, or a tank thing only, but rather I think that every M+ player should often have all of these things on their screen so that they can keep track of what they might need to do to help their group out. I'm sure that everybody watching this video has been in that one key where they're looking at their party fall apart in the last 5 minutes of a key on a difficult trash pack or boss, and then realizing after, maybe when looking at your replay, looking at your logs, or talking with the group, you guys had a lot of different ways out of that problem. What I find good players notice is communication. Sometimes you don't need to communicate everything, but something as simple as helping a healer out and saying, hey, I'm dry on this next AoE, or hey tank, I'm out of stops here, or I accidentally whiffed my kick is really important to the success of your group. So with my big number 2 on this list, I wanted to advocate that you should not only be vocal, but start trying to be a shot caller within your group. I for one found great success in personally starting to track my group's defensives, offensives, and as well as stops and kicks in order that I could go into a new group and understand what was going on. Downloading these 2 add-ons really helped me, OmniCC and MRT. Both these are very highly customizable in an effort to make you be able to track all the things that you need for your group, including group-wide defensives, AoE stops, and as well things that you might want to track such as tank defensives. I think that this is very integral, and I do think that I find that the best players I've also played with are also not only tracking these things, but helping communicate on the fly when their shot caller or their team members get a little bit overloaded with information within a pool. When you're just starting out with this role, don't expect to be perfect, but it is a good practice to even keep in mind what is available to you in your toolkit and when you did use these things. Remember to make sure that you're actually calling out actively when you used your CC, or maybe when you whiffed your kick. All these things can come together in helping your team synergize and build a cohesive structure and plan when you guys are trying to tackle a key. And on the big number 3 on our list, I want to talk about one thing that you can do on your own time when you're not doing keys, when you're not hanging in Discord, and you can even do when you're on your way back home from the gym, from work, or hanging out with your friends on the weekend. And that's reviewing your gameplay and reviewing your logs. One thing that a lot of the top M+ players do, and that I learned really quickly when I got back into retail, is that everybody has their own way of reviewing their own gameplay. This can include reviewing yourself in documenting or videotaping your runs. This could be streaming on Twitch and saving the VOD after, or just live logging your run through the Warcraft logs add-ons. I'm sure you guys have been in groups where everything kind of falls apart and people start pointing fingers, but the biggest part about this is that once a key is done, it's done. There's not really much you can do about it. You can be mad at your tank for throwing and maybe dying in a very easy pull, or your healer for face pulling or running out of mana, but ultimately what you can do to always be better is taking a look at that VOD, seeing what you could have done to contribute to the success of a pull, and maybe as well what you can do next time to help communicate to your team to prevent a wipe, or trying to save those deaths from shaving off a couple seconds on your final timer. What I find to be most impressive about a lot of high-end players, and especially a lot of the players that I've met over my time playing World of Warcraft, is the best ones always spend a ton of time on self-review. And this doesn't just mean self-reviewing their own gameplay. This can often be in forms of watching other people's VODs, seeing what strategies they do, seeing adjustments to routes, and seeing what they may need to earn themselves the success of a key. Kind of labeling in and jumping down into the shot caller thing I talked about earlier, there's a lot of communication that you can do to help your group achieve success in Mythic Plus. Whether this be talking about a pull that you might have seen somewhere on Yoda's Twitch, or perhaps watching Kira pull off an insane tank pull that you didn't think was possible. But with this, they spend a lot of time practicing, researching, and even deep diving into how to make those things a reality. So when actually taking time to review yourself, take into account that you should review your own gameplay and take a little bit of time to review other people's gameplay as well. Starting off into a new group or even a pug, it's sometimes nice to be able to say like, hey, like I really did this well in my last key. I really liked how these people did this. And as well, in my last key, this is my success. Like I was able to time this, or I reviewed that I might be able to do better here. Showing that your teammates and showing to your teammates that you can always be improving your gameplay goes a really, really long way, and it will earn a lot of trust and credibility from other people around you. Now this one is a little bit tricky because basically what I'm going to be telling you next you might not want to hear, and that's you should be playing alts. For the big old number 4, I think that I want to suggest playing alt keys is probably one of the most important things you can do to progress yourself as a player. And now I'm going to give you 3 very important reasons why this is a thing, and I'm going to start with the really basic one is perspective. When you're tanking your own keys and you play with a group of set people, you're only going to always want to play with a healer and 3 other DPS. But the issue is that when you're only tanking, you also don't get to see the approach from other tanks. Unless you're constantly on Twitch, you're watching YouTube, or you have some other form of supplementary kind of, I don't know, information that's kind of helping you out, you don't really get to see how other people play. This can be a problem in bottlenecking your knowledge, as when you don't see other perspectives, it can limit you to your abilities, limit your critical thinking around routes, and really start to beg the question, do you actually see the group through every perspective? Now, I'm not going to tell you to have to go pick up an alt and play to a Mythic Plus, like title level, but one of the things I would kind of caution is that when you're playing a different role, you get to see the key through an entirely different perspective. Having started to heal, then gone to tanking, and then gone back to DPS where my roots were in Mythic Plus, I've had a pretty well-rounded approach in being able to see the game from a lot of different aspects. One of those aspects, especially as a healer, is when I swapped over to tank, I could actually see and feel where tanks felt weakest. There's often a complete different minigame that you're playing as a healer in keys versus a tank, but being able to see that perspective, not only was I able to adjust my gameplay in a lot of scenarios where I thought the tank might need help, whether it be vocal communication and stops when they might be overwhelmed, or when they might need an external. For instance, on my preservation evoker, I do track brand, spikes, meta, and Feldev, so I do know that like a demon hunter's weakest point is when they don't have any of these things available. So tracking these things and filling that TD in that gap, even if I'm not in communication with them, can go a long way. Sometimes too, especially through different perspectives, you might start noticing things that your group might need. For instance, if as a tank I'm pulling a very large pack and I don't see any problem because I'm living but my team is dying, but then I go to the healer approach where I start to realize like, hey, like this is a big group limitation if my group isn't using defensives. This helps me calm to my group as a tank, saying that, hey, the healer's going to really struggle here. For instance, it's Throne of the Tides and you're upstairs and there's 10 ravenous dogs. I need you to make sure you have ice cold ready, like disperse, like we should be coordinating CC. This is the time where the healer might be coggy just as much as the tank is, and it gives you that chance to be able to communicate and speak for your other team members. Not only does this go a long way for you, but it goes a long way for building trust within your team, especially to your healer and DPS players, that you're looking out for them as well. The second kind of critical part of this is when you're playing alts, you got to meet a lot of other people. Again, when it comes down to networking, which is your bread and butter of WoW, you're not going to meet a lot of tanks if you're playing a tank. You're not going to meet a lot of healers if you're playing healer. But when you do get to play both those things, or multiple of those things, you do get to meet people in other groups that might also be playing alts, looking to learn perspectives, or looking to even reroll classes. This is a really good into networking into other groups, sometimes even seeing if they need a sub for their own themes, or as well kind of communicating and discussing route options, successes and failures, and really building that community I was trying to hone into in the first part of this video. The third part of this is you never know who you're actually going to meet. I think there have been a lot of times where I've just started gearing up a new tune, and I've queued into a key and realized the whole group is 3,800 alts. Now, at this point, it makes it a little bit easier as well, because if you are high score on your main tune, it gets pretty easy for you to get invited to alts or get invited to groups in your alt tune. When people see that your main's pretty well acclimated, then you're going to get invited to your alts and you're going to get that IO boost pretty quick. But again, this kind of comes back down to networking. If you play an alt and you decide that you want to play with these guys for multiple runs, they might invite you to Discord, you might be able to network a little bit, and who knows, you might be able to learn something about your class, maybe they main the same class you do, or learn something cool about a route, some tech, or something else that might go a long way in your own keys. In my final top 5, I wanted to talk about one thing which is going to go a long way not only for playing World of Warcraft, but probably your success in life too, and that's accept and give feedback. Nobody wants a person on their team at the office or in WoW that sits there, complains, and doesn't take ownership of their own actions. If you care at all about this game, you have to realize that this is truly a people simulation. You're working with real people that have real families, real jobs, have been to school, maybe have done the trades, and work with people in their everyday lives. So when approaching it, treat Mythic Plus like you would like hanging out with a bunch of your friends. Take it seriously in the extent that you're respecting other people's time when you're playing, but at the same time, don't think overboard about trying to be somebody you're not, and especially too, when somebody calls you out on something, don't freak out and be a weirdo. Take ownership of your actions. Everybody misses a kick, people miss stops, and guess what? There's more keys that have been depleted out there than have been timed, but at the end of the day, all you can do is really learn and be a real human being. I will say in my time doing M+, I've met a lot of interesting characters, and some of which might be a lot below the skill level of the top players I've played with, but it doesn't really matter. I love playing with them just because they have a good attitude, they're wholehearted, they're funny, and I want to spend my evenings or my afternoons playing with them. Maybe we don't get the most score in the world, but at the same time, we're playing at a competitive level, they take ownership of their actions, and they're people I genuinely want to be around. When you're building a community, and most importantly too, when you're trying to make friends within a game, you don't want to be that weirdo. Again, make sure that you're also giving feedback as well. If you find that there are things people could do better within a key, discuss it after the key. Don't make a big fuss about it in the middle of a key, but rather after the key is done, try to come up with an action plan. If these are people you're regularly playing with, even 2 or 3 of them, it's good to discuss within each other what you guys could have done a little bit differently, maybe discuss a different poll, or as well, maybe make some considerations if you already use that same key in a pug. Maybe you have to alter the route a little bit. Maybe something that worked really well because you had one person in the comp different might not work well again, and that's okay. But making sure you have those honest conversations with each other and not flipping out just because you bricked your key, that's going to go a lot farther than any IO key in my opinion. And there you have it. Those are my top 5 things in which I found to be the successes of being able to pug title in Mythic Plus. Now, again, there's probably 1,000 different things out there, and I can go into a lot of really technical parts, but if you really want to be successful at this game, I would try to start with these things. 1, build a community. 2, communicate with your team and help shot call within groups. 3rd is reviewing your gameplay. Always take time to make sure that whatever you're doing, if you made a big error, get one of your friends to go and review the VOD with you. If you know people of that class that are really good, it doesn't hurt to just send a DM and be like, hey, I have this clip or I have this log, can you look at this for me? And this goes a big thing to building that community too. When you have more people around that you can depend on to help you out, as long as that is reciprocal and you're also scratching their back too, you're going to build a lot more meaningful friendships and you're going to have a lot more enjoyable of a time doing keys in World of Warcraft. Go and pick up some alts, especially too when you're considering different perspectives. It helps a lot to empathize with not only your healer, your tank, but also your DPS players. It feels really bad when you're DPSing and your tank has no idea what to pull because they don't track your defensives. Having a tank that understands DPS cooldowns and their power, as well as having a tank that understands healer limitations and what they can do for their group, goes a lot further than anything I can actually recommend in this video. Those people that I've played with that have played at that level, and for myself personally, I find it to be integral in my success, being able to say hey, we should reconsider X because we don't have Y, or our healer might struggle, or our tank might be limited. Especially too, never ever be that DPS in a group that if you haven't tanked, just keep telling your tank to pull. If you haven't tanked before, I would definitely give this at least a shot and you'll see exactly what I mean. Lastly, own up to your mistakes. Honestly, at the end of the day, we're here playing a video game. For 99.999% of you, this isn't a job, there's nothing on the line, and we're probably not going to make it to BlizzCon. But that's okay. Make sure you're having a good time, accept feedback where you can, give feedback, and more importantly, help build those bonds that are going to help you get to the point where you can feel like you've met your goals in World of Warcraft. And there you have it. Those are my top 5 things in which I learned through pugging M plus title within Dragonflight. I'm looking forward to being able to do this again in the War Within, but now it's going to be a lot different as I've already kind of built up a community, the friends I really want to play with, and as well have an idea in my head of how I want to go do this. But anyway, hopefully this gave you a few good takeaways. Good luck with your keys, good luck in the War Within, and good luck on your journey to get your title.